welcome back after the tea break. I think there's been a phenomenal audience. Never seen people sit through so religiously and hear everything that's going on. So clearly, I think the topic is of interest, and hopefully the sessions will keep you engaged. I'm delighted, Gopa, to host you again. We were together last year on the similar event, at the same event, in fact, and we had this whole discussion on what the future of work looks like. What has changed in the last year, or are we in the same boat still?
No, I think, thank you, nasscom, thank you, Sangeeta, for the opportunity. I think a lot of the themes that we hear are the same, but one word I can't help not hearing is AI. So I don't think we had AI so much of a theme, so it's amazing how the world has changed in 1 year. And some of the things I talk about is also going to involve AI, but I think there's a big shift that's happening, a big opportunity that's happening, and it'll be great to talk more about that. But
yeah, I think you can't really have any conversation without the word AI right now. And I think the discussions in the morning very well articulated that adoption will happen. It may take time. It will be different for different organizations. It may be invisible in some cases. But I think we've all got to learn to embrace it and maybe stay ahead of it, right? So we've got a very interesting theme for this session now, which is really about how do you elevate talent and ignite innovation. And clearly, I think in this midst of all the change that's taking place, innovation has to be super critical for organizations. So as an organization, as a leader, Gopa, and you are the original fintech for companies that, for people who in the room who don't know about Fiserv, but they were a fintech 40 years back, for an industry that's amidst so much change, right? How do you maintain that whole balance between creativity, innovation, operational efficiency, staying ahead with all these new flashy startups that are coming up in the fintech space? And how do you nurture that workforce? So what are you doing differently there?
So Sangeeta, I think over the years I've been in multiple forums and internally, innovation is something that's discussed very heavily. We are fortunate to be in an industry that's going through a tremendous amount of change. So Fiserv is a fintech in the payments space. And all of us know that the payment space is an area where the change is very rapid. Sangeeta and I were talking earlier, when you leave the hotel, you want to tip the valet 50 rupees, you can do it on GPay. He's got it. He's got GPay, you got GPay, you can make a payment. So CK Prahlad talked about the opportunities at the bottom of the pyramid. That's really happening in payments. Well, that's just one example. Whether it's the amount of online payments we do, etc., there's a huge amount of change happening. So the DNA of the company, the success of the company has innovation inbuilt into it. And the reason I call that out is innovation has got to be done in a way that relates to the company's mission, what the company's success matters. So innovation can't be something that's separate and you do other things on a regular basis. What you deliver to the world, what you deliver to your customers is got to be relatable to the people who are actually driving the innovation. And when I come to that, I think one of the things that we have learned over the years is branding innovation is a great way of getting people to buy into innovation. I'll just take one example of the many things that we do in our company. We have a program called BIG, which is Business Innovation Group. And the idea of BIG is to come up with the next big idea for the company. And we have around 10,000 people in India. We encourage people to participate in this program that's run annually. Around 1,000 people choose to participate. They go through various levels of coming up with ideas, etc., and taking it to a place. But long story short, we then eventually identify 30 people out of these 1,000 people who participate and then put them through a boot camp. We get external mentors. We get our senior business people from all over the globe to come and speak to them. And the brief they have is to come up with the next big idea for the company. So if I take Big 3.0, which was a 2023-24 initiative, we came up with ideas that has got multi-million-dollar potential for Fiserv, whether it's around how we authorize transactions, So a large part of our business is around credit cards. Every time you use a credit card, it goes through multiple checks around fraud, balance, it goes to multiple stakeholders.
You're a very regulated sector, right?
Highly regulated.
So how do you embrace failures and encourage innovation in a regulated sector?
And I think, I'll just take an example, regulated sector or not. A few weeks back, we had an innovation program in the office and we had somebody called Dr. Annadurai. I don't know how many of you heard of him, Dr. Mailaswamy Annadurai. He's called the Moon Man of India. Do Google him if you don't know who he is. He was responsible for some of the major space programs for India, for ISRO, including Mangalyaan, the mission to Mars. There was an Akshay Kumar movie which was based on him, and Chandrayaan. And we were talking to him about failure. And if you recall, Chandrayaan 2 was an attempt to go to the moon. Modi was in the room, the whole of India was watching, the Prime Minister was in the room, and unfortunately that failed. Did they let it get them down? And I won't go into details, but he spoke about how ISRO had a culture of learning from their failures, saying we did this wrong, we did that wrong, but let's do it better. And Chandrayaan 3, last year we had Chandrayaan 3 landing on the south pole of the moon. So there's a great lesson there on how companies need to. So in a way, to answer your question, Sangeeta, I think one part of innovation is being not let failure stop you. I think we as humans are wired in such a way that we dislike failure, maybe even more so in the Indian cultural context, if I may or may not be right on that. So for organizations to be embrace failure and learn from that and move on is very, very important. And if we can do this on such a highly visible initiative, ISRO can do it, I think there are a lot of lessons for us to learn there. But I'll just make one more point since we spoke about Chandrayaan 3. When we were trying to land on the South Pole, Chandrayaan 3, Russia launched a mission at the same time trying to get to the South Pole of the moon 2 days before us. Their project cost 16,000 crores. And I learned this from Dr. Annadurai. Our project, Chandrayaan 3, cost us 600 crores. 16,000 crores, 600 crores. Unfortunately, Luna 25, the Russian program, failed, and we landed on the moon successfully. So we came back from failure, and we succeeded. By the way, I just realized, as I said, it's got a nail-biting story to it. The Russian, 2 days before we did, they're trying to land. They failed, we landed. I'm sure Akshay Kumar is reading the script of the next movie that covers all of this. But I think, I would say failure is the F word that we got to ban from the company, from organizations.
In an enterprise world, right, I know it's not as easy to accept failure. So culturally, what are you doing differently around that?
I think it's the small and big things that you need to do. And, and it's a big mind shift change that you need to make. I'll be honest, I think we've been only partially successful in that. We've been talking about celebrating failures, which is the right kind of failures, but it's a journey because it's not got to do with machines, it's not got to do with software, it's got to do with the way we think. But I think there's a mind shift change that takes place. And I'll go back to this. ISRO could have said, we had the Prime Minister in the room, the whole country was watching, failed, and we are not going to do any more moon missions. They didn't. They went, picked up, learned from that, and went forward. I think there are lessons to be learned for us as human beings and as organizations, what we do differently.
So the other thing we were talking about, and in the last session, when I asked the panelists on challenges, I think one thing came about engagement, right? And the fact that as humans, face-to-face engagement is important. The kind of work we need to do in this changing environment, we need a lot more face-to-face engagement. And yet, hybrid working is working differently for different companies. Some are still struggling with it. Some are managing to make traction. What has been your experience there?
We have been, I think, very philosophically clear that we work best when we work together. So I like to think, and I participate in a lot of peer forums. So I think nearly 3 years back, we started asking our people, please come back to your base location. Then we started getting people back 2 days a week into office. Then we got people 3 days a week. Now we are at between 4 to 5 days a week back in office because we strongly believe that we work best when we are all together, when we are working together. I have this story that my teams are tired of hearing me say. In the first month we were back in office, there was a problem, and I walked across to somebody else and said, "Hey, what's happening here?" And he said, "We got to talk to this person," and we went the 7 minutes problem solved. The same thing in remote working would have been PowerPoints, half an hour to 1 hour team meetings and discussions, Zoom calls, team meetings and the like. I think we are very, very effective when we work together, and we've been pretty clear as an organization that, and I heard Ram say this in the previous panel, that we are tribal, we like to argue, we like to discuss. I think being back in office, being working together is very important. And as popular or unpopular as this may be, that's the way we work for decades and decades. COVID was a couple of years of an aberration, but I think we believe that we got to get back and work together.
So what worked? Is it mandates? Is it the willingness for employees to come back, which I think is been harder for most organizations? But what do you think was the secret sauce that's working for you?
I think it's feeling the benefits of being back at office. Good offices where people are able to collaborate, they're able to work well, providing them all the support they need, whether it's transport, whether it is the kind of facilities you have in office. All of these, I think, are big parts of small and big things. The quality of your cafeteria matters if people are going to spend a lot of time. And two things, I think I personally find myself much more effective when I'm in office. And I have heard from a lot of our women employees that I'll quote somebody who said this: coming to office is me time for me. Because if you're at home, you got to wear multiple hats as a mother, as a homemaker, so on and so forth. And without treading on any toes, the man of the house can lock the door and say, "I'm working," but the woman of the house has got more responsibility. So that's just one part of it. But I think making sure that office is welcoming. Small things like when we started coming back to office, we made it a celebration. So we, in a phased manner, when we got people back to office, we'd celebrate, etc. And office offers so many other things, right? Face-to-face engagements, face-to-face programs. I think it's a lot of those big and small things that make office a welcome place. Yeah. And I'll be honest, an element of mandating too. We have been, yeah.
Yeah, the stick and carrot, you need both, right? So let's talk about skilling again. We've been since morning discussing the imperative of skilling, upskilling, reskilling. Every organization understands the importance. You're providing your employees tools, platforms to do all of that. How are you ensuring that your employees or maybe academia that you're partnering with, how are you ensuring that they're ready and are more willing to adopt all these learning processes that we are providing and making them more successful, right, in some ways?
I think a couple of things there. I'll mention three things. I think number one, we got to think of cluster scaling. So earlier you learned one technology, you went on one.
You used the word poly-skilling the last time, which I thought was very interesting.
And I'll come to poly-skilling in a different context, but cluster skilling is where you just don't learn one thing, you learn a group of things that contribute to your ability there. So take data analytics. So get somebody to learn machine learning, get somebody to learn data visualization, and also the soft skills that go with that particular role. So it's got to be a combination, no more. So help your people bundle those together, learn together so they're equipped. And poly-skilling, and I think Sangeeta in the earlier group, in the earlier panel said, it's all, poly-skilling is also about giving people the opportunity to learn many things. So you're in business X, you don't need to just learn that technology or that business. We will give you the opportunity to learn whatever you want. The plus side is you have people who are skilled across multiple areas, but what it does require is a drive, a fire in the belly of the employee to want to learn those things. So give the opportunities and get people to go and explore and learn themselves. But make sure you recognize the learning and value the learning and provide the career opportunities that come with that. And I think one great example of where people do need to learn in today's world is Gen AI or AI in general, right? It's going to change the world. So I think in many forums I've heard the question, will Gen AI replace roles? No, but it will reshape roles. When I started my career many years ago, we were on the cusp of going from, banks were on the cusp of getting computerized, and the biggest concern was jobs will be lost when computerization comes in. We know what's happened, right? A lot more jobs have been created, but the jobs have been created in technology. So there's been a big shift. So the opportunity for people to learn and grow, and the opportunity for us as leaders to provide us on upskilling people on things that are transformational and going to change.
So, just to build on the whole Gen AI point, I think one issue, and particularly in the financial services sector, is the concern around responsible AI, safety, security, bias. And I think in another conversation we were having, we were like, it's not technology is not biased, it's humans who have a bias, right? So how do you build that culture where, as you let your employees experiment with these new technologies, you're also teaching them the ethical importance of these new technologies, because, the good and the bad lies with the human at the end of the day.
I think we have a lot to learn, and I think we've got to recognize the fact that there is a whole journey ahead of us on AI. I know, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the story around a large tech company who was doing hiring using AI, and the AI favored male candidates far more than female candidates. Why? Because the data it's trained on because the workforce today comprises a lot more of male employees than female employees. You taught it on that data, and the AI very obediently and blindly followed what you taught it. So that is the risk of using AI, and AI will never be successful unless you curate it with the right kind of human intervention. Fiserv, for example, has an AI council globally, and then chapters all across the company. And the responsibility of that council is kind of twofold. It is to grow the AI initiatives in the company, but the other part of it is making sure that the guidelines, the guardrails, the ethics around AI are well protected. I think it's very important that we do not let AI do what it does. The black box that exists should not be a black box. People should review it, and I am certain that in the years to come there will be roles that people will have, which will be just to make sure that your AI is doing the right thing. By the way, I'll say that the danger of using tools like this is not in the first 6 months and not in the first 1 year. It's 2 years, 3 years down the line where you trust it and let it on its own, and it starts making possibly not the right decisions, and you're impervious to that because you trust it too much. So human intervention, human curation. One of the things that you also hear, Sangeeta, is that when you design your models, sociologists must have a view on what the model is doing.
So you have diverse teams, not just techies designing it, but bring in people from diverse sectors, right? So diversity is really key to building AI solutions. I know we're going to run out of time, so if there are any audience questions, please do raise your hand. If not, I'll maybe move to the next question. So, I think another trend that's being spoken about a lot, and we heard it this morning also, is this whole multi-generational workforce, and especially as Gen Z or the Alpha generation, as more and more of them are coming back, their approach to work is very different, right? And as organizations and as leaders, we need to adapt to that mindset, that attitude. One example somebody was giving me that for them 18 months in an organization is a lifetime, right? Which is like for people like me, it's history, right? So how do you structure an organization where you may have a lot of people from this generation for whom potentially 18 months is a lifetime, right? And not have people who are very tenured in the organization?
And if you talk about the newest generations, I think one of the things that we need to do is everything that we do, there must be a large input from them. So, for example, in Fiserv, we have a resource group called YoPro, Young Professionals, and they play a big part in contributing to a lot of the things that we design, whether it's our benefits, for example. As small as it may seem, our benefits now include a lot more coverage for parents, important to a young professional, gym memberships, the kind of cafeteria options we have, all of these, we make sure there is an input from this generation too. And I think a lot of what we do and grow depends on the inputs we get. But I also have some, a little bit of a caveat around this, on this whole multi-generational piece. I think we got to be careful not to adopt these cookie cutter models that come from globally. For example, baby boomers, etc. These terms are very American, based on American culture. Baby boomers, by the way, are post-World War II generation, when America saw big growth and resurgence, etc., may not be entirely applicable to India. So there are significant nuances in cultural, multi-generational layers in an organization in India. I think we got to do what we need to do to make sure there is a alignment and a fitment there, but in a way that fits this particular culture and these are organizations.
So, I'll move to the last question since we are almost out of time, which was the theme is elevate talent, right? What would be your top 3 priorities, which, are very key for this whole theme about how do we elevate the talent that we have in our organizations?
I think number one, I spoke about polyskinning, giving people their own opportunities to learn and grow and tying it to their career progression. I think that's the biggest one. The old days of our mandating what you got to do, instead find your own path and we'll support you is one. The other is, I think, equipping middle and senior leadership to support and grow that, and also clear the way for the things that you want to do forward. And I specifically mentioned that when you talk about a lot of new changes that are coming in, things like Gen AI, sometimes the skepticism and the concern is sometimes at the middle and senior layer on, does this work for our organization? What does it mean? So that learning and adoption of new opportunities has got to be also in that group. So we got to focus on making sure they are ready to take the larger talent pool to the next level.
I think that's a very good point, and I've not heard so much of it this morning, which was about the middle, right? And how are we as organizations, as an industry, investing in that middle? Because, we put a lot of effort on the freshers and we talk a lot about that, but we are not talking enough about the middle management and how we are grooming them to be the future leaders and, understanding them and their priorities well. So just a closing question, Gopa, what keeps you awake at night?
I'll say this, being part of part of the Indian talent force, seeing the way we adopt and contribute to what the world needs to do, what our organizations to do. I am really excited about the opportunity. So if anything, I'm kept awake by the excitement of what we can achieve and what we can do. We've had a terrific track record so far, and I think it's just going to grow. So I'm very positive about the way we're going.
No, great to see the positivity. I think technology, financial services, India, I think the stars are crossed. So hopefully it's going to be another great year for us and as we move forward. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to maybe connecting again next year at the same platform. Thank you, Gopa.
Thank you.
For more content on tech and leadership, subscribe to NASScom YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update.